Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your cybersecurity series. My name is Vlad and I'm here to help you and support you in your cybersecurity journey, even if perhaps you don't have a technical background. Today it's episode 31 and we are wrapping up everything we've seen so far as part of this second sequence. So the idea was to give you an introduction to cryptography, so by far not making you experts in crypto, but making sure that you have the fundamental knowledge in order to understand the main principles and understand how it all fits back into cybersecurity. Of course, we have seen a lot of acronyms as part of these previous videos, so I will try to recap all of that and connect the dots. So we started our journey back in episode 19, and this episode was really an opening video about how cryptography is really central, very at the very heart of cybersecurity. And the idea, if you remember my episode 1, there are three fundamental properties in cybersecurity: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And the truth is that if you want to preserve the confidentiality of your message, of your correspondence, or any system in general, you have to apply certain measures. And some of them, some of the answers lie within cryptography, which is why today, in the modern era with computers and servers, it's absolutely essential to have at least a basic understanding. Then in the second video, so episode 20, we talked about the difference in between steganography and cryptography, because those two notions are quite close and can be misunderstood or confused with one another. And they both date back from the Greeks. They have a Greek origin, at least the wording. And the idea is that in steganography, the message is hidden in plain sight. So the message is there, but you have to know exactly where to read. And I give you some examples about how you can embed a message within a picture, within sound, or within a wider text. The difference with cryptography is that in crypto, your message is not readable. There is this concept of a cryptographic key, which is an element that turns plain text into something that is what we call encrypted but completely unreadable. And only the people with the key can go back and forth in between the plain text version and the encrypted version. And these concepts are absolutely not new. They date back from the Greeks, as I said. The word cryptography dates back more than 2,000 years ago. And the idea is that the Spartans back then, they were using cryptographic measures. And some of them were using a skitali, so this wooden tool that we talked about, that allows you to encrypt a message by rolling up a ribbon. And that kind of computes a new encrypted message. We also talked about the Romans, especially Caesar, so slightly after the Greeks, how he also came up with his own strategy to hide military messages or messages to his lieutenants. And you can see that cryptography and warfare are really close with one another. And the idea of Caesar, and that was also reused later on by Vigenère, the idea is that you can switch characters in a word or in a sentence. You can switch the letter A with the letter B or the letter C, and then your message gets encrypted by using different techniques. And essentially, that works with all alphabets that rely on characters, which is the case of English, French, German. That would not apply to certain Asian languages. However, the main properties still apply. Then we talked about how it's not only about encrypting letters or switching letters, you can also apply dictionaries. And I give you the example of Moriarty's book cipher that was used in Sherlock Holmes' movie. That's also one way to encrypt certain messages. And that's something we've seen in the Middle Ages, where using the Bible, you could convey certain message. And then we also went into the concept of keys. The idea is that cryptography is something that was a lot that has a lot of theory, that has a lot of mathematical applications and researches. And one of them is called Kirchhoff. And Kirchhoff, really early on, he established the main principles of cryptography and how cryptography should be designed to make sure that it is secure. And the idea that you should remember today is that the secrecy should really lie on what we call the cryptographic key. So it's really not about the algorithm, it's really not about the device that you are using, it's really about making sure that the secret key does not fall into the wrong hands. And that has some important applications, or let's say some important applications, because in the 80s, many people would tell you that, well, my algorithm is secure because it's something designed only by my team, known only by a small team, well, that does not prevent your algorithm from being breached. So the secrecy is really about the cryptographic key, not about all the surroundings, the device, the knowledge, etc. In episode 25, again with modern warfare, we talked about Enigma. So Enigma is the device that was used by the Germans in World War II. So it was a device, and as I said, the secret is not really on the device or the algorithm itself, but it was really about the configuration of that device that changed on a daily basis. And of course, it's also a nice example to show you that even if you have the best technology, sometimes everything can go burst because of the users. And it was the case with the Germans. Early morning, there was this telegraphic message that was sent to all German troops. It was a weather forecast announcement. And by knowing that every morning this forecast was broadcasted, they were able to, the Allies were able to retro engineer and find out what were the precise starting positions of the Enigma machine and decrypt the message. So it's really to show you that even if from a mathematical standpoint you can have the best techniques, you are also relying on how the users are going to use your device eventually. Then we completely switched gears in episode 26, and we really focused on modern crypto. So that cryptography that you can apply on a modern laptop or a computer or the mobile phone, any modern device. And we talked about XOR. So XOR is this operation that is performed by the processor, so the processing unit in your laptop, and that is basically comparing bits of information. It is something extremely practical because it's really built in into the processor, so it's extremely fast, and you can apply this technique onto pretty much any stream of data. But the problem with that is that you would need a key that would be the same length as your message. And today it's not really scalable. It's not really something that we would do, because you can understand that if you need to encrypt a full hard drive, you will need a second hard drive as a key to encrypt it using XOR function. So even if it's extremely fast, extremely useful, and a perfect cryptographic cipher, provided that you don't reuse the same key twice, even if it has all those perfect meanings, we have to move into a different strategy. So we need to move into block ciphers. So we are splitting our messages into different fragments, and we are applying encryption techniques onto the fragments. And that's the notion of block ciphers. I also gave you in that episode some practical examples of modern algorithms: DES, which is deprecated, AES, which is basically what you are using every time that you need to encrypt a zip file or something like that. Then, episode 28, one of my favorites, I basically introduced you to the power couple of cryptography. So it's Alice and Bob. So those two characters are extremely famous because they are part of the theory, they are part of the lore of cryptography. And all the publications that you will see are referring to those two characters. Every time we invent, we have an Alice that is trying to communicate with Bob, and both of them are trying to exchange messages, sometimes love letters. And the idea is to show you how can we preserve the confidentiality of that correspondence and how can we break it eventually. So in that episode, we talked about a new concept, which is the asymmetric encryption as opposed to the symmetric encryption. So in symmetric, you have the same key. So the same key allows you to move from plain text to encrypted text. However, we discussed that this has, again, limitations. So what we can do is create two keys that will work together absolutely. So one will be used to encrypt and one will be used to decrypt. The idea is that you are going to make one of those keys public and one of them will always be kept private. And the idea is that you will have Bob's public key that will be made available to everyone. And using Bob's public key, you can make sure that when you write some correspondence to Bob, only Bob is able to decrypt it, because only Bob has his private key and he will be able to decrypt the message. So it's actually by using your correspondence public key that you are sending him or her some messages. More information back in episode 28. Finally, we also talked about hash functions. So hash functions are extremely practical to compute what we call a signature or digest of a particular file. And this notion is very essential because it allows us to ensure the integrity. By computing a hash function of a certain file or a certain email before and after being sent, we can make sure that there were no changes on the content. It's extremely interesting because so far, every time we talked about encryption keys, we are only ensuring the confidentiality. But thanks to this new addition, this new notion, we can finally make sure that integrity is also preserved during transit. And finally, in episode 30, we wrapped it all together. I gave you the example of the digital signatures and the certificates. It's basically showing you how you can exchange private messages with other counterparts by leveraging everything we've seen in this second sequence, by leveraging the asymmetric encryption, symmetric encryption, hashes, certificates, and signatures all together. So I'm not going to spoil you too much, but if that was clear, or if you need more insights, please go back to episode 30 because it's really the one that ties everything back together. So that's it for the day. The idea was to give you a short overview of everything we've talked so far and how it really fits or how it connects the different videos together. I will see you soon in a third sequence. I yet have to decide which topic we are going to go through. But again, I'm estimating we will have maybe 12 to 15 videos on a specific topic, and then we will do a wrap up as usual. So thanks a lot for your time and see you soon in sequence number 3. Take care.